Thank you. Good morning on this 13th day of December. We're meeting a week early. It's been noticed. This is the rescheduled regular meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Airport District Board of Directors. And roll call.
Director Gagliotti is absent today. Director Pick,
Here.
Director Leffel,
Here.
Director Miller,
Here.
and Chair Sani.
Present. Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Morello, would you be kind enough to lead us?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Communications, announcements, informational items.
Just one from staff, just a reminder, and thank you for having your meeting a week early, but this is so that we can host our annual military lounge for our military travelers and their companions. That will start on Monday, the 18th and go through December 26th. And that will be right here in this room.
Wonderful.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Do you know, do you all still need to collect some money?
We don't really have visibility to that because that is an
A restaurant.
initiative done by the restaurant by Woody's at the airport, but I believe any dollars are more than welcome, because he does provide breakfast sandwiches and lunch sandwiches and or salads that are available to everybody. So that is their part of the collaboration.
Okay.
I just want to acknowledge it. It's really valued in the community, and it really is nice to transform this space for so many that serve our country as they travel home or travel to wherever they're going for their vacation or their holiday. So thank you to all staff that are involved in that too, and putting that all together, because I know there's effort in converting it as well. So
Yeah, and I ditto all that. Did we make a press release on this? Okay, good.
all right. Any other comments? I'll go ahead and open it up for public comments on non-agenda items. Not seeing many in the audience here. One person online. The two panelists are promoted.
No hands
No.
are raised.
No hands are raised. I'll go ahead and move on. Consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda. Anyone like to?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull number 2. And I'll move approval of items 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Second.
Who gets it?
Doesn't matter. Carl.
Oh, did you say second?
Yeah, they both got it.
Okay,
Neither
I only heard myself. I'll give it to
We'll give
Tito.
it-
I don't care.
Okay.
My Christmas present to you.
1 through 3. Yep.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes,
and Chair Sani.
Yes. And to Director Leffel.
So I was reading the minutes on the lease committee, and I saw that the Executive Director Lapierre gave an update on the potential purchase of Forza Motors by Motion Products, Inc. He reported their deal was resurrected and the lease agreement was already approved by the board. I asked yesterday in finance if we could discuss this, because I remembered that we had a lease in front of us, but that we asked Director Lapierre to go back and ask for a couple other things, and then the deal fell apart, so we never actually, to my knowledge, we never actually approved it.
So staff did go back and pull the minutes from that meeting. And it was approved. The only request that was made by the board for change was to make sure that it was a 3-month deposit that was kept by them. So it was approved with that one addition of 3 months of a deposit.
Okay, so we have not seen the new lease in finance with the 3-month deposit, and obviously lease committee didn't see it. So I'm not sure that it's totally approved, because did we get the 3-month deposit in the new lease?
Yes. Yeah, so the only change should be just the, beginning and ending dates of the lease.
Okay, so what are the beginning, I mean, we're supposed to approve a lease, and I just questioning how this is going down, because there are changes. Scott, help me out.
Yeah, I would need to go back and look at the meeting. So there are a couple of possibilities. If the board made a motion in a second and approved the lease with a modification to a 3-month deposit, then that would be an approval from the board side. Then we would go back to Forza Motors. And if they agreed to it, then it wouldn't need to come back because it would be exactly what the board had agreed to. I did not have the opportunity to go back in to look at the minutes or to view the board meeting to see if that's what occurred. If the board said, we want a 3-month deposit and didn't vote on it, then it would need to come back. So the question that I have, and maybe staff has an answer to this, but the question I would have is, was there a motion and a second and a vote on the agreement with the 3-month deposit? If so, then it would be approved. If there wasn't a vote on it, then it would need to come back. And that I don't know. I'd have to look unless,
I just sent you the minutes, but our reading of it was, yes, there was a vote, there was a motion, a second, and a vote on the approval of the lease with the
Okay.
3-month deposit, but they should be in your email box.
okay.
Wouldn't we have signed a contract?
No, because it fell
That's what we're
apart.
doing now. That's what they're doing now.
Okay.
Here's what I would say. If the parties
was-
all agree on what the terms are, we can bring it back for ratification to the board if you'd like to have it, ratified by the board.
I remember it's a fairly sizable lease.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly do that if that's the pleasure of the board.
Yeah. For me, it's just keeps it cleaner if we have done that.
We'll,
And I'm just one person. I'm just saying,
Yeah, I mean, I
And
have no
I'm not-
problem looking at it. I'd appreciate doing that. My question is it a pro forma review of an executed legal document now?
yeah, the term ratify means to just approve what was previously approved again. It's just to look at it again and say, yep, then we bless it just so it's all I's dotted, T's crossed.
So it is not an executed document at this point.
Well, I don't know if, again, I'm gonna split the two things. What we appear to have board approval, whether the contract was executed, I don't know.
Okay. I'm fine with looking at it. I'm just curious whether it's,
well, I think I heard yesterday that it's supposed to close escrow on 12/31, so it's kind of a done deal. But I just questioned why it wouldn't be brought to the committee for the committee to look at, and then for the full board to finalize that, yes, it's done.
Hmm.
It's lots, I don't remember when this was. All I had was my memory, remembering that we had asked for a couple of changes. And I told Chris yesterday, I don't even remember when it was. I just remember I had taken on my paper, written a couple of notes, and I didn't remember when it was, and I wasn't going to go back through a year of minutes to try to find it, but I could.
Given the fact that this closing is happening now and it's been more than a year since it was approved, I think it might be a good idea to bring it just so there's some certainty to it. We can certainly do that. It's not a
great.
I remember when this all came about. I remember having questions about the viability of the company, how solvent it was and everything. And I believe those were answered to at least to my satisfaction. But, that was a while ago, so it's hard for me to remember what I had for dinner last night.
I know what you're having for breakfast.
If it's the direction of the board, we'll bring it back for ratification.
If I may, Carl, Director Miller, so in the process of looking at this transaction again, I did review MPI's financial statements for the last 3 years and their interim, and they're quite strong.
Good.
I have zero concern about their viability as a tenant. Much stronger than Forge, I would say.
Which I recall we had a few challenges. We would always get it.
I'm not gonna
but-
say that's not saying a lot.
How long is the lease for? I don't recall that we even discussed that in leases, Mark. I do recall that it was, something that was done during COVID. I had recollection of it,
Yeah,
but
I don't have that.
there wasn't
detail.
much detail in the
Yeah, I
committee.
don't have that detail in front of me, but it's certainly a longer term lease, so.
Okay. I think I would agree with the
Yeah, bring
idea
it
that.
back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll move that we approve the minutes of the lease committee.
Second.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Level,
Yes,
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chair Sani.
Yes. All right. Oops, I lost my agenda.
it's easy to do, shuffling it around.
Mm.
We are now to regular agenda items. Item G, annual financial and compliance report for the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2023 and 2022. The audit report from Ryan Domino of LSL. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Pleasure to be here in a manner of speaking.
Mm.
Hope you're all having a wonderful morning. And I'm sure a few of you have noticed that I am not Brandon Young, who is your normal presenter at these events. Brandon is traveling with his family, so he asked me to fill in with, for him for this meeting. So anyway, yeah, so I'm here to report on the annual comprehensive or annual financial statements and other compliance reports that were issued along with that. So one of the things that Brandon mentioned that he's done in the past for you all is just kind of walk through the various auditor reports that are in the document. So I'm going to do something similar today. Just as a background, again, we have been engaged by the district to perform a financial audit for the year ended June 30, 2023, in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. So generally accepted auditing standards, think of it as kind of the base, bare minimum auditing standards that every auditor in every industry has to follow, whereas government auditing standards is actually a step above in terms of scope of work and additional testing that has to happen. We also performed the single audit over the district's federal award programs for the year ended June 30, 2023, and also compliance audit over the passenger facility charge revenues and expenditures. So the document in the packet has all three audit reports included in it. So as far as the audit went, we usually conduct our audit in two phases. We call it interim and year end. During the interim phase, which was, I think, April 24th to the 27th of this year, this is where we examine the district's internal controls. We provide feedback to management. We perform our risk assessment and basically develop audit procedures to respond to any identified risks that we perform. So this phase came and went that 1 week, and then we dove into the actual numbers and compliance testing the week of August 21st. So this is when we did what everyone thinks of as the audit, when we're doing the detail testing of balances and transactions, when we're testing the compliance with the laws, regulations, and grants, those types of things, as well as any other procedures necessary for us to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So all that work went in August, and the whole point of it is to render the reports that we're going to talk about now. So in the financial report, one of the first items in there is the independent auditor's report. So this is really the heart of what we're working towards and what we're trying to issue. And so we did issue an unmodified auditor's report for the financial statements. There's three kinds of audit opinions. You have modified, unmodified, and adverse. And so unmodified is the highest and best that we're allowed to render. It means that the financial statements are accurate and reliable. as of June 30, 2023. Along with that report, we issue what's known as the Report on Internal Control and Compliance. This report you can find in the single audit section, kind of moving towards the back of the document. And what this report is, this is the one that's required by government auditing standards. It's in here where we would disclose any sort of deficiencies in internal control or any sort of non-compliance that we identified with laws, regulations, grants, those types of things. And I'm pleased to report that that letter is also very short and sweet, and there's nothing to report on that. So we had no reportable findings this year. Continuing to move through the document, we have the report on compliance with the major federal award programs. So this is the letter that's required by the single audit. And for the year that we audited, so June 30, 23, the major program that was tested was the Airport Improvement Program through the U.S. Department of Transportation, FAA. So we performed all the compliance testing that the FAA requires for that program, and determined that the district is in compliance with all the terms and conditions of that major program for this year. So that letter is also an unmodified opinion and a nice clean report. Okay, so moving towards the very back of the document now, we have the compliance report on the PFCs. So the FAA issues an audit guide for PFC, passenger facilities charges. And so we conducted audit of revenues and expenditures in accordance with the FAA's audit guide and noted no non-compliance there. So unmodified opinion on that as well. So across the board, we had 3 clean audit reports and no reportable findings. So just a few other things to go over. You know, we also issue what's known as the auditor communication letter. It's kind of just a written summary of this presentation, where we would talk about any sort of significant estimates. For the district, it's really just the pension and OPEB liabilities. Those are determined by actuarial estimate. So we look at the assumptions and data that gets provided to the actuaries, make sure it's accurate and that the actuary got good stuff to develop the estimate. We don't have any concern about fraud, waste, or abuse. Nothing was identified and nothing was brought to our attention. We had no disagreements with management regarding the application of accounting principles and no difficulties conducting the audit. So across the board, it went very well. The last thing I like to do in these kinds of presentations is just kind of go over a few financial highlights. I'll preface it by saying for detailed explanations of changes and balances in the year, the management's discussion analysis is really the place for that. These are management statements, obviously, but just a few highlights would be that overall net position, so that's your ending reserves, if you will, increased about $10 million to about $98 million at the end of the year. So that's always a positive movement. The unrestricted portion of net position, which is the amount basically available for spending on as needed, represents 77% of annual operating expenses, which is really a fantastic ratio and about 11% of total net position. Capital assets increased a little bit, about 9%. The long-term debts did go up about $3.5 million this year due to that new Caltrans loan. The net pension liability decreased about $700,000 from the prior year and is currently about 77% funded. And then lastly, the other post-employment benefits liability also decreased about $500,000, but as there's no trust currently set up for it, it is not funded. So that is kind of my walkthrough of the document and the presentation of the audit. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer what I can.
Thank you. Appreciate the explanation and your time, and I'll go ahead and open it up. I'll first open it up to public comment to see if there's anybody in the public that would like to make a comment. Seeing no hands raised, I'll bring it back to the dais. Like to start.
I'll start. Finance reviewed this and we found it to be a really good audit. Thank you, staff. Because it's really nice not to have anything to have to scratch our heads over. And thank you for a thorough audit from your team and your firm. It's well presented. The one thing that I asked, just so the staff for the board, and I think Carl and I are the only ones who probably had this as a lagging issue. But for a long time, we had a problem with the PFCs because they didn't match with the feds and what we had. And we actually had a grand jury investigation on them. So I know that I asked Brandon, and he said it's pretty much now that we're in tune with the reporting agencies so that we don't have that. And it wasn't an issue before, except for, I think, one of our board members who probably pointed it out to the grand jury. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ryan, for a detailed and easy to follow report. You do other audits for other government entities, correct?
Yes, indeed, I do.
I always like to ask, how are we doing with our contemporaries as far as our challenges and our finances?
Yeah, so I think probably the most comparable other types of governments out there would be other special districts. And so what we're really seeing for your numbers compared to kind of the industry, if you will, for your pensions and OPEB, those are usually the two biggest questions that people have, and where are we at comparatively speaking. And really, being part of the CalPERS cost sharing pools and stuff like that, you're very consistent in terms of movement on those two items. That's very normal from what we're seeing across the board in terms of funding status and where the liability is moving across the board. One thing that stood out to me as I was preparing, my notes for today is the fact that your unrestricted net position is about 77% of operating expenses in the year, and that's actually a really fantastic percentage. A lot of other districts and actually the bare minimum recommended by the GFOA is about 20%. So the fact that you're at 77 it just shows really good, healthy reserves, which I was pleasantly surprised at, not having seen your financial statements before. So across the board, I think, for your liabilities and capital assets, it's consistent with others, but there seems to be really well management of the reserves and the spending. So that would be my observations looking at it for the first time this week.
Thank you. And thank you, staff, for doing that. That's all I have.
Mr. Pick?
Thank you, Chair. Ryan, great report. Thanks for walking us through it, and great work to the staff. So I was trying to reconcile whether what I was reading was true because it was such good news. And it sounds like it is, and that speaks really highly of our management team. And the board oversight previous to my arrival. So that's great stuff. It was interesting for me to look at a special district report as opposed to a city report, and the emphasis on the federal compliance section, which is robust. So I learned a bunch here. I guess the only question I would have, or it's really a comment going forward because it's more about budget build and consideration into the future, is what, if anything, more can or should we be doing with regard to dealing with OPEB and unfunded liability with regards to some of the mechanisms that are becoming available to cities and special districts to help finance over the long term. Not that we're doing anything wrong now at all, and maybe we're doing exactly the right thing, but there may be something we want to consider with regard to our reserves to help them grow in a way that is focused on dealing with OPEB and unfunded liability over time. So again, nothing to do with today's report necessarily, but this is generally one of the few times in the year that unfunded liability and OPEB come up. So just want to make that comment.
Lots of conversations over the years on that, huh?
Yep. Perennial topic.
You-
Yeah. But again, great. I
Or-
mean, just to kind of cap it off appropriately, it's a great report. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Wilson, was this your first year working with LSL?
Yes, this is, so I came on board in October of a year ago. So
Okay.
this is my first year with the audit with LSL.
And in the past, it's been very smooth. I think we actually just changed auditors when I came on board. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we were in transition. It was smooth and worked well for your team as well.
Yeah, I've been an auditor and have worked for companies I've worked with auditors for many, many years, and it was very smooth and very efficient. And they're embracing technology, and so I think it's very, it was almost a virtual and paperless procedure. But we are embracing the efficiencies of all the technology that's available today.
Great, great. And I just going to point to page 21 in our books and just how our total capital assets have increased in the last 3 years, and applaud everybody, staff, and all involved in continuing to build stability and strength for this district as we move forward with some big projects potentially.
Mm.
Thank you all. Anyone else?
I would move approval of, do we need to accept this? Yes, I'll move approval of acceptance of the audit.
Second?
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chair Sani.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. Thanks for
Likewise.
joining us. Welcome. Morning. We get big posters instead of things in our packet for this. So I'll just read it and then I'll go let you take it over. This is a presentation on the Scenic Route 68 Corridor Improvements Project. Doug Blyce. I hope I said that right. Bilsey.
Bilsey.
Sorry about that.
Mm.
Transportation Association of Monterey County, TAMC. Welcome.
And
Mr.
I would just
Bilsey.
add that this is in response to the draft EIR that Caltrans has recently released on the 68 corridor study. So right now, the draft is out for public review and comment. So this will be our opportunity to provide comment before January 8th of 2024. So Doug's going to kind of walk us through a little bit. They've already done 3 public workshops in the community, but he's going to walk us through especially some specific areas that touch upon airport properties and in and around the airport.
And just a correction, a little correction, this is just an exchange, but you'll need to submit formal comments.
Correct.
Take comments here, but.
No, but I mean, yes, correct.
We had public hearings and they went really well. They were well attended. This project obviously is going to have a great impact on the airport operations. So we thought this would be a good opportunity. This is Caltrans project and TMC is the sponsor. So
I'd have to turn it on the left. Because I.
This is based on the presentation we made at the public hearings, but narrowed down. But the purpose is basically 3 things. We want to improve traffic flow. We want to address safety concerns. We want to provide wildlife crossings, key intersections. To be good. This is the extent of the project, and you'll. If you dive deep into this huge document, this called the draft environmental document, you'll see that there was a few other options we could have done, but they're just not really feasible. bypasses. I don't know if you go back as far as I do with TMC, that 30 years ago when the corridor was closing, I worked on a project that was, and we were looking at bypasses, that they're no longer feasible. With the reality of bureau lane management and environmental impacts, we decided to limit it to intersection improvements. And we put the wildlife crossings as close to these intersection improvements. So we came down to two alternatives. One is to convert all the signals along the corridor to roundabouts. And the second alternative is signal intersection modification, which is an interim widening. So we would go up to 4 lanes, from 2 lanes to 4 lanes back to 2 lanes. So each intersection, you go up to 2 lanes. When the light turns red, you can queue back 2 at a time. When the light turns green, 2 can go at the same time, merge down, go to the next. So that is essentially the 2 alternatives. The signal alternative will look pretty much like a signal. So I'm just focusing here. We haven't made a decision, and there's no bias towards one or the other, but we're looking at the 2 of them. One point, though, that's really important, I think, when we start looking at entry points to the airport on Olmsted. This is not Olmsted, but to give you an idea of the different options. That if it's Caltrans' choice and their maintenance people decide, it would be hardscape. The center of the median. Around the sides can be landscape, but they have concerns about the cost of the maintenance of that. So they're looking at some maintenance agreements with agencies, not private entities, but agencies that will be around forever that can change it from this to this. So the landscaping is not a given, and it's something that we will have to work with intersection and stakeholders to decide what's the best treatment. But to give you an idea of what they would look like, this is Jocelyn painting over visual simulation. So this would be the signal alternatives. You'll see 2 lanes, and then downstream from this signal, there'd be a merge down to 1 lane. Everything between the intersections would be the same. So those are the 2 alternatives. This is the typical wildlife crossing. You'll see that it's typically a current, let's say, creek-ish type of underpassing, so that there's already somewhat of a grade separation. So, but it can be done with the tunnel goes down pretty steep for an animal, but in general, the locations are identified as being where the boulders, where water's going ready. A ballpark figure of the construction costs, 153 million for roundabouts, 176 million for the signal modification. I have another slide if you want to see the difference. The main difference is the right of way. And when you start talking about widening, the Caltrans standards, you don't just get to merge down. So you can see this at Wrightsdale now. It's a long ways before you go back down to 1 lane or 2 lanes, and that ends up being a significant right of way difference that will need projects. So during construction, the roundabout's going to take a little bit more temporary easement, but permanent easements, the signal modification takes more. So when you look at them side by side, you have 2 good ones. They're pointing if you stand over there. What you see here.
Doug, just take the microphone with you when you go, just because for those online virtually, so they can hear you speak. Thank you.
You'll see these pictures here. When I go side by side, the important thing about the environmental document is we have to make sure that we've looked at everything within what's called the area project impact. So if you superimpose the roundabout with the signal and you put a buffer on there for just in case, you come up with this green line. So you'll see that at every intersection, there's an area around the intersection that everything we hope will stay. So that's one of the chores is, since we're not perfect. We put it out for public review. And we hope that, agencies and individuals will take a keen eye on this and say, oh, well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? That's probably what I would recommend is for the comments period, is any questions you have, just ask those questions. You don't have to read the whole document, but if you can find the answer in there, great. If you don't find the answer, you just want to know, specifically, ask the question, did this buffer include X, Y, and Z in the area that we're looking at? Yeah, so that's the two alternatives. Yeah, that's a little blow up of the Olmsted. So you kind of see the importance of trying to coordinate this with the Comfort Inn driveway. We want to make sure that the traffic doesn't queue back. We were talking earlier about Garden Road and the possibility of maybe a roundabout being constructed as part of the master plan for the airport or the city. And it's outside of the scope of work for this draft environmental document, but it could be something that, we look for funding, we do jointly, bus stops, things like that. It might be officially out of this environmental document, but that doesn't mean it can't be part of the project with the funding of it. The other thing about that buffer in the area, it allows us to make some modifications to this. This is a single lane roundabout. And more typical of roundabouts, you can see it at Pebble Beach, for instance, that's called a hybrid, where there's some places where there's two lanes, some with one lane. We did not design that. Current guidelines try to make a one lane roundabout first. And we could, with minor modifications to this document, we can go and build, modifying, the roundabout to be a hybrid as long as it fit within that footprint, which we are able to do that. So we did have some latitude there. We want to make sure we validate it now to make sure that there could be some modifications, but the plan is to start it out as a single lane roundabout if that alternative is taken. Signal, again, is pretty straightforward. This is the roundabout design at 218. This is the one place where there's actually a two-lane intersection, primarily because it's two highways merging and a lot of truck traffic, oversized vehicles. That's also within airport property, so that might be worthwhile showing you. And then the timeline. We hope to have the final environmental document. So not to go too much into it, but we have to make the decision on the preferred alternative, and then we have to finalize the design and make sure we fit in within that footprint. We hope that all be done in the fall of 2024, and the final design would be summer 27. Construction could possibly start in 28, and we're working both ends to the center. The first phase, we believe, will be on the east side by Salinas, and work our way on there to Morellis, and then jump over here, which would be Olmsted. So that's the current plan, and the so you have till January 8th. I think that's a good enough time. If you need more time, you can let us know. There's no point, there's no problem with extending it. We'd rather not. We'd like to keep this project going. But if there's a need, we can extend the public review. But these are the different ways to put in your submit your formal comments. Again, I can work with your staff. I can't make the comments for you, but I can certainly interpret the document or help you with the wording if you have some issues. You can look at the document at our office or the 3 libraries listed. And we have a really neat website. I think if you get a chance to look at the TMC website, it's a virtual workshop. So you have people, you walk around, you say, I want to see this document, you touch the document, it pops up. We think it's a pretty more intuitive way to have a kind of find out. We have a section, questions, which is a little innovative. Usually we get questions and then we answer them after the documents close for public comment. And there's not much of a dialogue going on. I personally want to switch the story on that and start as soon as we know there's going to be questions or we get questions. And they come to a point where we say, you know, the public should know if we want to put it in the FAQs. So you see pretty extensive FAQs that's going to be expanded as we get comments coming in. So the QR code is there. I'll stop. We'll keep jumping around. But there's more information, but I want to just, if you want to go to Caltrans and you go to the QR code, you look at Google and just, you show Caltrans Highway 68, you go right to the project page. And that has the phone thing. It has a email. You go to the TMC website, there's actually a phone number. All you have to do is call the phone number and you just talk into the phone and tell what your comments are. We translate it and put it into the formal comment. But it has to be done on the formal process. And so, you know, just speaking to me today is not necessarily going to be, you know, a formal comment. So we can look together. That
Thank you for that. I'll go ahead. Let me open it to the public first, in a sense. And can you see if there's just, like to get it out of the way.
Oh, yeah.
Don't want to forget,
Hmm.
which I have done this year. Good. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment and then open it to the dais. You know,
Yeah,
Okay.
I have questions too.
I do too. I'll start. If
Go ahead.
It's okay. This is exciting. I am jazzed about this. I've been tracking this since I was at Delray Oaks. It's a wonderful project. Thank you for the update. You answered a lot of my questions, but I do have a few. So, and I just want to confirm if I heard this right. You're gonna determine a preferred alternative prior to going final with the final EIR. Okay.
So we closed the comment period. I'm not a SQL expert. My general understanding of high level. Close the comment period. Get all the comments. Have a response to comments.
Sure.
And then you get a response to comments. At that point, we decide whether we did a good enough job that the information that we would use for a decision is done. You might have to recirculate. So we might have to go and recirculate it because something comes up and say, you didn't know about the oil rig that's right there at the intersection.
Right.
To know, you know, and we have to recirculate. Then once we recirculate, then we go into details on the design. Then Caltrans makes the decision on which of the two alternatives they prefer or match. They are allowed to match the two and take a little bit of here and a little bit of there, but we're kind of under the opinion it's better just one or the other. Then we go and draft the final environmental document. And looking at possible legal challenges and that's why we're conservatively saying it could be a year before we get that final environmental document, which has the final decision.
Which has the preferred alternative in it. Got it. Do we know what the criteria Caltrans are going to use to determine between the two alternatives?
Good question. And when you look at it, in essence, it should be alternative that best meets the project in the least environmentally sensitive, most environmentally sensitive way. And environment is also traffic, safety, and all these other things. We talk about environment, but it's a broad, anything environment, biology. And that process is somewhat influenced by community values. So I think that's something where Caltrans, we hope, will be listening to TMC board and the public to say, what aligns with community values.
Yeah.
When they make that.
So that's a great answer. So Doug, in my experience with these processes, no matter how much you're trying to do outreach, and by the way, it's really innovative, the online interaction. You have people coming out of the woodwork saying, you never said anything about this. First we've heard, and crying foul. I'm curious if you're able to track the number of people interacting with your draft environmental document through that web portal you're talking about.
And let me add something that this is a public hearings. So the three we had were public hearings, and that was kind of led by Calplan. These kind of meetings will continue. So when the public comment period closes, that doesn't mean there's no more interaction, public outreach. So then kind of the next phase is going to be working with the airport district, the stakeholders, the HOAs on that final design. So there is going to be continued
Interaction.
discussion,
Right.
on how best to design it, and as long as we fit into the environmental document. So I don't know.
Fair enough. Yep. So status of funding?
But as you probably are aware, that state funding has different colors.
Okay. And then last question for you, and then a quick comment is, can signage be placed in the roundabout?
Yes. Oh, you know what I did? I did answer your other question. We do have a count, but we do have a software that
Great.
social pinpoint things. So get that to you. That hundreds so far we've had 200 people at the public hearing.
Good.
Signage in the center, it should not be a distraction. So there is, there's a lot of places. I worked at the city of Carlsbad where there was an art form in the middle of the roundabout, which is gorgeous.
Right.
And it's huge story flame that goes up. So there are things we can do. The signage, the official signage, airport to the left, is usually in advance. And I think there could be like a theme, at the center island, so that people know that's airport exit. But you're not going to get a neon sign that blinks over, that distracts drivers.
Yeah, no. So for what it's worth now, just transitioning to opinion. So I so prefer the roundabout to the signalized intersection. It's hard to overstate. When I worked at the city of Monterey, first got involved in the city government, we were doing the roundabout at Pebble Beach at Highway 68, and there was a lot of opposition to it from everyone that thought it was really going to be a bad solution, and it has turned out to be an absolutely wonderful solution. And so I hope that it's a roundabout as opposed to a signalized intersection. As to signage, what I hope we can do is look at whether it's art or a monument sign of some kind that designates the airport more than directs people towards it. By that time, you're at the intersection, but it can be potentially a very handsome welcome to the airport. And I'll stop there.
Statement, I think that would be, for instance, that would be a comment, staff, could the hardscaping be designed to be a statement here? that would be a good comment.
Terrific. Thanks for a great presentation.
Director Miller.
Well, thank you. I too support the roundabout. I had apprehensions for the one at 68 and Highway 1. I would travel that multiple times a day. Unbelievable the way that works. That always was a choke point, and that has, for the most part, just disappeared. So that's good, and I would hope that we would have a roundabout at Olmsted. And I also would hope that there'd be more coordination between what we're doing, putting the terminal in, putting a roundabout just a few 100 feet away from Olmsted. And this entrance statement, Art, never thought about that, but that would be fantastic. So just a couple other questions just popped out at me when you showed all the critters that would use the wildlife crossing. I really can't see a hawk or a bird flying through that. Why wouldn't they just fly over? Why would they walk through or fly through that hole in the ground?
But I think that somebody did explain it. I just can't remember, but they are predatory, I believe, so they may not fly through it, but
Well, they're going to land and walk through. Yeah.
Part of the
There's
ecosystem.
cross is where the
Oh,
fall.
So they would use it as a hunting ground then. Okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, what is a traffic count right around Olmsted to 218? Do you know?
I don't know, to be honest with you. It's in the deep. What happens is at both ends, it's kind of capacity at both ends at the entrance. So even if I did have a count at Olmsted, I just drove it today, so I do a time study, and it just right about Olmsted, it starts breaking up. So you have a bit in the afternoon. So the count's a little limited, but I can get you the data.
I mean, you showed a roundabout at Jocelyn Canyon. That seems almost meaningless to me. I don't know what benefit a roundabout would have there. Very limited, I would think. I know there's been some discussion with the signalized approach. There'd be more coordination between the signals, but a worry that they're so spread out that it would lose any benefit. Not like we have like on Lighthouse Avenue in Monterey when they coordinated those signals to help traffic flow.
That's a good point. There's some, I think everybody's opinion is valued. So there are some people that say, hey, you know what, you just upgrade the signals and everything's going to be great. But it's a good observation, and having worked with traffic signals for decades, the farther apart they get, the less benefit there is to coordinate. So the really tight ones, like Jocelyn and Olmsted, that's pretty close, or 218. You could get benefits from coordinating that, and on the other end, Peninsula, San Peninsula, here, but in the middle, there really is limited benefit to coordinating. And in Jocelyn Canyon, we have to look at that and kind of assess whether there's a cost benefit to start with that or to start at Olmsted. So one thing that the roundabout does is, in my opinion, it kind of distributes the pain. It distributes the delay throughout the corridor. So if we work both ends to the middle, the chances of us needing all of the intersections all through is probably remote. But we need to study it just in case we did do it. But if we did Olmsted, we might find out that, for instance, Jocelyn doesn't need to be improved, and it works fine.
Is that the plan now? Because at one time, the plan, as I understood it, was to start on this end of 68 and work towards Salinas. Then I heard it was starting in Salinas, working towards Monterey. But now I hear working on both ends towards the middle, which to me sounds interesting.
I think when you look at the traffic by Toro Park, and I just came back to TMC after a long break, but you know, so I'm kind of warming back up to this. Toro Park was in the project years ago, and then they pulled that out now. So we don't have any improvement to Toro Park, but when you look at driving, I just did it today, and it took me almost 30 minutes to get to Toro Park to St. Vincent. So when you look at that area, and you look at a disenfranchised community that is typically in the valley, the people that live in the valley and work in the peninsula, it's really something that brings it home on why grants kind of skew more now towards a lot of things that don't just have to do with traffic, but you know, social equity and things like that. So when you look at social equity, for instance, you see that the people that travel and get stuck in that less traffic every single morning. So that's a half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening that they have to take on that other people don't. So we think that's the right way to go with phase one. It will be more successful in getting the funds, and then the next phase would be on the east. So that might be a little bit different than what we were saying before.
Well, I would hope that we could have greater coordination, especially if we're doing construction here. It'd be nice to get it all done at one time rather than to come back and revisit it. And that's going to be my hope to the board, that we can do something before. Right now, it's scheduled to close. We would have to have something into you by January 8th, if I understood. Okay. Okay.
That's again, questions about the environmental document, but our dialogue continues on that. How to coordinate the work and things like that for design,
Which is later.
and outreach that will happen afterwards. But this really right now, just January 8th, we really need to know is the area of project impact, did we capture it? And everything in there that was studied, did we do it correctly? And somewhat influence that decision-making process that the county council makes, which one better fits your values.
So if we wanted to get a statement in urging coordination between our construction of our roundabout and yours, especially to see if there's joint opportunities to access additional funding on both sides to help pay for this, and having some sort of art entrance statement, when would we have to get that to you?
Probably before groundbreaking. I mean, it really is years, you know, I think before we be looking at construction and all throughout that.
Okay. So maybe not the urgency that I first thought we had to get that statement to you.
Well, if I could, again, I'll work with your staff, but I would strongly recommend that if one alternative meshes with what your goals are, one of these design features, without getting into the specifics, but if you'd say, hey, you know, the landscape one better fits, we would really like to work with you on a landscape or a hardscaping that is an entrance statement, that's probably what's here now, because maybe one alternative versus the other says
Okay.
you're here and arriving at an airport. So anything that would influence the decision between one or the other, I would put that in your statement. But the coordination, I don't think that's really that critical. We've always, and you're part of our board. You know, you're definitely.
Okay, very good. And lastly, not related to what you're doing here, but what's happening on Highway 68 between Pacific Grove and Community Hospital? It seems like for the last 5 years, there's always been some road work happening there and re-happening over the same, I mean, they're paving and repaving the same thing. What's What's going on up there? Extra money you're trying to spend or?
Speak for Caltrans, but from my understanding, it's a matter of buckets of money. And they had closed one grant, and it was a shop project. One of the other, it had to get done. Ideally, if you do another project that's coming a year later, would have paid. But then you have this decision of, do you want people driving for a year on rough pavement? But I think in essence, what they decided, and I won't speak for them, I can get that to you, but I remember hearing in our discussions that the projects were just far enough apart where they needed to do the pavement, but it's not ideal to have to go cut up new pavement. That's what they ended up doing, is kind of several different projects because they had different objectives getting done on that.
Oh, they're still working on it. It seems to go on forever, just a couple miles. Okay, didn't mean to get off track there.
It is all about you.
I know.
Doug, thank you. It's good to see you again. Couple of things. The city of Monterey rezoned half of Garden Road for housing, and it's held up right now for water, but we all know that eventually, especially with the governor's new edict going to the CPUC, that we're going to have toilet to tap throughout the state. And it's going to be much faster, evidently allowed, than what Cal-Am and the Monterey One Water are doing now. That's going to get built out, and that's going to be a huge construction project because that developer's been sitting on that now for quite a while. There's also, I understand from a hot phone call I got yesterday, that there are up to 1,000 new housing units that are being contemplated by the county between Olmsted and down to 218 in that whole meadow area that's below Monterey. So that's moving along. Garden Road's moving along. In my uneducated opinion, it seems like it would be better to start with an area that's already going to get torn up, anticipating what's coming, as opposed to wait till all of those are under construction and start moving in, and then you've got all that extra traffic. I think the traffic on Olmsted is going to pick up a lot because of the two things that I see that are in approval stage right now. And I really would like to make a big plea for that, that we really take that into consideration. We have, I think our best month is maybe about 24,000 employments. That's about 800 cars a day coming in here. That doesn't account for people going back out. So you pretty much can double that because mostly those that come in do go back out. With Garden Road going to be torn up for considerable time, it's just going to completely change the way all the traffic moves around here. And with the roundabout that we are talking to the city of Monterey with, that would be at the actual entrance to the airport, that too is going to tear things up. So I just ask that you all look at all of that. I also was on Highway 68 coming home last night. And interestingly enough, like when you're coming home from the valley, it's smooth sailing until you get to about York Road, maybe Laguna Seca, and then it starts slowing down. So you can look at the traffic in the morning one end, and you can look at the traffic in the afternoon the other way, because everybody that went this way is going to come back. I think with the addition of what's going on at this west end of 68, it's going to be huge. And I would just ask that you'll really give consideration to what's coming, not just what's there. So. No, go ahead.
Yeah, we do forecasts, and it did show, increased traffic. I can't go exactly in what was modeled or not, but it's MPAD that kind of dictates, what's in their model. And they kind of hear this all over the region of, well, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. So when they do the modeling, they somewhat look at all the possible developments and what they think is reasonable. I can tell you this, that with the mentality of let's build our way out of congestion, we could realize that. And I think we kind of, as a industry, decided that, you know, we can't build our way out of congestion. So it's about, you know, how do we match our needs, our community needs as good as possible. So the delay is no longer a sequel impact, for instance. So when these developments come in, it's not the same game where it would say, okay, they have to mitigate every second of delay that they cause. And we more, this project is more about, you know, 24/7, 365. You know, how do we get something that flows better? How do we get something that's safer? And we do need to look at the peak hour, but not with an eye on how do we solve traffic, but how do we increase, you know, reliability so that it's not 20 minutes one day and 10 minutes another, you know, that's more consistent and it's more dependable in terms of, you know, the traffic is flowing the whole time, not bottleneck. Your point that it's important that we get these projects done sooner rather than later. So I think,
Well, it's also, you talk about social equity. If you put a lot of, I'm going to say, lower end apartments in condominiums on Garden Road, which is what's going to end up there, that is, for me, a huge social equity piece that you're going to get people moved in there and then you're going to tear up everything all around them and force them all to go back this way, to go around that way, to get to wherever they're working. So I'll make my own statements to you all because I really feel strongly about this, to be visionary and not just reacting to what's there. I don't see Toro Park growing that much because they're pretty much built out. And a lot of those are moms taking kids to school in the morning. And you know what? They should be encouraged to carpool. So I'll say that. Wildlife crossing. You didn't really address how many of those are along there, but are those being built in conjunction with a roundabout in the area, or are they total separate?
there was 5. I did have it on the map, but if you want.
I remember seeing all of this a couple years
So
ago.
the sites have been selected. They tried to put them right near the intersection. They are independent and that one can go without the other, but to your point, why go and reconstruct something after you built it? So the intent is that the tunnel will be built in conjunction with the intersection. And it could be either alternative if they're at the same location.
So I know there is, and I know you all probably have like how many dead animals are on each section, but I know there is a huge wildlife crossing that goes right about at the end of Laguna Seca Golf Course and where the housing is on the Laguna Seca estate side. Because I know there were 2 mountain lions killed there a couple of years ago in pretty short order. And I have friends that live there. I mean, their rings are crazy when you see how many animals go back and forth. And I'll look online and see where the wildlife crossings are, but I think that's important to take a look at. And that's not near any of your roundabouts. It's just kind of out there in the middle of nowhere, but they like it.
I went through a couple, and there's one by the golf course, and that's one of the culverts that's there, but they are designed as culverts, so I kind of remember having to jump through, so a deer can't go through. The other thing is that, yeah, I'm not an expert, so I'll stay in my lane in traffic, but there's fencing, and people are saying, well, how would the animals know? They do know because of sense and things. So part of this success of previous work like this is somewhat training. So you are going to be training the animals with sense. You know, once one finds that path, another one does, and then they all, you know, they're pretty smart critters, and they say, hey, this is a lot better than on the pavement stuff. So the design is there to be, you know, turf and natural terrain so that they're encouraged to go, and then there's going to be fences on each side to guide.
So I talked to Todd about this a while ago, but is there a real significant difference in the car count from the east side and the west side?
Going in both directions. Well, most of the traffic is through trafficking, so
I mean, in the afternoon, when I'm buzzing to Salinas for meetings, I can usually drive over the speed limit and through that whole area. And the slowdown is at this end. I mean, it's just the traffic. It's like they're coming from that way in the morning. They're going back in the afternoon, but they seem to be more paced out in the afternoon and not quite as jammed up. They're jammed up here too.
Yeah, my personal experience, because again, I moved out of the area and came back 15 years later, and the wow factor, and it could have been COVID, but traffic is spread out. Both morning and afternoon, but what I've noticed is that there's still a peak, a sharp peak in the morning. So today at 8 o'clock, it was backed up and, going westbound. I went both directions. So there's just a surge that happens in the morning because people have to get to work on the peninsula. There is a pretty good distribution, I think you said. It's a gradual distribution in the afternoon, but I've seen it 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. So it spreads out, and that's kind of a nice thing, so that's that. I think your point is that there's maybe, I think morning traffic westbound is higher than afternoon traffic eastbound in an hour period, but I think it's more of it spread out. It just does seem to flow a little bit better always in eastbound. I think it's might be that traffic peels off at Lois Grade and comes up off Lois Grade.
It's that, and they go to Toros, they go to Washington school. I see where they turn. I'm on that a lot, and I see where they go. In the morning, it's more because you've got people taking kids to school. They go to Santa Catalina, they go to York, they go wherever. And in the afternoon, they're all playing soccer, or they're picking up their kids and going to Del Monte Center or whatever. They're not all going back at the same time. So that's my observation over many years of driving it. Why wouldn't Olmsted be a hybrid? Because of the increased amount of cars that we have in and out of here, and then what's going to be built on Garden Road and across on the county land.
Very good question.
And then
Sorry, but we work with Caltrans, and they have guidelines that are single lane roundabout, and I think that on this, things are actually changing.
we're familiar with it. FAA will not allow us to put any more than 5 gates because that's what we qualify for now, even though we know we're growing. So, it's government at its best. If you use some of our land out there in that roundabout, do we get paid? How do we?
I think that will be that 2 weeks.
Start with us and we can talk.
Yes.
Time,
80
time,
million, we're trying to build a new terminal.
time, time is money.
No, that's a good point. Again, that's negotiate or the discussions on the design, but that's a partnership that I think we've already talked about, the frontage road and how this would maybe eliminate an access point. So, there's no reason why homestead can't be done as soon as possible.
And then I have one more thing. So you've got 156, which has been stalled forever. And I see that it's moving, inching forward. Imgen is going to get roundabouts. I see them out there doing assessment work right now. When does that start?
Yeah, the project's already started. They've selected a consultant, and they're doing some preliminary. They are working now, so it's the studies have all been done. Construction started. I don't have construction's supposed to be completed, but there's nothing done. 156 Castroville, that interchange. We are, fingers crossed, getting last bit of design issues.
So will Imogen, will those roundabouts be finished by the time you start on 156? No, 156.
Good question. I think they'll especially, as you can see with engine, you start the work, but it can take a year before it really impacts traffic. So a lot of work could be done on 156. So I would assume, if I could reword your question, that engine will be completed before traffic is impacted on 156. And if not, we will coordinate that to make sure we don't overlap.
Yeah, I saw it, was it last week or the week before when I came through 156, the barriers that had been squeezing us down were gone. But, and I know it just takes forever to study everything, and that's how everybody keeps their jobs. But for me, to have all three major corridors to the peninsula and to the Salinas Valley under some kind of work at the same time is terrifying. Because now people at least have a different way to go. Even if they're sitting in stop traffic, they're still kind of moving. So I just keep my eye on the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't see that as being a problem, but as schedules change, but I do think it'll go engine 156 and then 68, and I don't think there'll be much over.
Good, good. For a time when this looked like it was going to be faster out here on 68, I was like, oh my God, we're going to have all three of them. But anyway, it's just an observation. I think that's all I had, and the airport will write theirs, but I also have a couple I'll write to you all. Thank you.
Like everybody else, be great to have our construction together as much as possible. And certainly with the changes that are in the works here, that coordination. So appreciate you being here today. I think it's been a couple years. I don't know that I've even had a TAMC presentation in my time here. So I appreciate, and hopefully that can continue. I know Director Sabo served on your board for a long time, or the advisory board as it was. The wildlife path, there's nothing close to us around the airport on that.
Talking, they're talking about that. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, but doesn't mean we can't do it. But when they looked at it, the study, and again, that's not my expertise, but they did identify what they felt were
Migratory patterns and
and then that's the issue B to connect the natural habitat. It seems like connection there. And although our study that would be they take a look at that, I don't know why that was the end as far as yeah, good question, especially if that's the question. The one thing that I do want to point out on 218 is that there was two ways to go about the design here that I think you'd be interested in. And one would be to put a retaining wall and minimize the impact. But what we did on our approach was to increase the area project impact. We actually increased the area, but what we did was a slope. So it's a pretty steep slope. And that's why having, I think if that's what your question is, can we have some kind of wildlife crossing in this area by 218, or is that what you were?
I just know wildlife is always a challenge for, for the airport and for the airfield and things like that. So I was just curious to whether.
We
you
would
have-
like not to have a
Yes.
tunnel coming to the airport. That's what we're.
Yes. You don't want to direct.
We don't give them a welcome sign.
About that, if you have crossings that are not desirable or compatible with the airport, so.
To that area and support it there. Yeah, and I'm sure staff is well versed on that and be aware. It was something that came up for me as looking at that. The tunnels, are they actually used by people as well?
It can be.
Okay, walking paths and stuff? Okay,
Yes, but
okay.
you need to get to either end.
Not easy necessarily.
Golfer might have a bad.
And then I really like the idea of, I think it was the Director Pick that had that, art piece, something marquee, something welcoming as you both come and go, and just a real point. So I know that's down the road and something, but we tend to be kind of doing some of this creative thinking of what do we want for this next generation to see around here too. So that would be great. And then as far as whether it would be better to have the concrete and all of that, or it's better to have, I personally like the plants and the green space, but I know that maybe it's not efficient for an airport use. So certainly leave that up to the staff for better knowledge.
I think I want to be careful on that. It was more of a safety issue because the guidance that maintain that needs to happen out there. That's the concern. Safety
Sure.
is a positive.
Sure. You get into green space though too, right? And all of your water filtration and things like that. So rain gardens or things like that. And I think it's a more calming effect in a lot of ways too. If you go to certain airports and, there's that part. So thank you.
I just have one thing.
Mhm.
This morning I read something. It said, "Be decisive. The road of life is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision." So let's
Or
just,
pick the wrong road.
let's move it forward.
Amen. Chair, couple follow-ups?
Yeah.
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 Hey Doug, just a couple of follow-ups here. First up, this is for Chris. You're taking notes for comment. Great. So two crystal clear comments I hope we can communicate is that roundabout preferred. The second one would capture in some fashion, can we put a welcoming artwork or entry piece there to the district and to the airport? Thank you. Going back to Director Leffel's comments about increased housing and whatnot in the future, I would assume, but I'm not going to assume, I'm going to ask, are you modeling on future load?
These decisions have just come out really recent, and so I don't think that
Which AMBAG model? I mean, AMBAG's models, if you're using their,
It's off of the RENA numbers and then the vehicle miles traveled. And
that's
they-
perfect because the RENA numbers are ridiculous. We'll never get
Exactly,
there. So
but
if
they are there.
if they're based off the RENA numbers, then we're over engineering, which is great.
exactly what the year was. Did a traffic conference in 2024 that is based on this. Growth rates might go back to 2007. Which version can they follow, right?
Okay. And then last question for me is to Chris. Chris, you've been listening and taking notes. But from your perspective, looking at our master plan, looking at where we are with this project, any comments or thoughts from you?
No, I think you've captured all of the ones that we already had identified as staff as we've looked at this. So our goal would be to put together a draft comment letter that will be officially submitted. And I think through the executive director, pass it through board to look at and make sure that we've captured everything. But I think you also, as board members, have captured the questions that we've already seen as I've looked through the whole draft EIR.
And Director Miller had a.
Yes, so that's something I was gonna urge, that we do come up with a comment letter, that we do work with Doug, because he's offered that assistance. In addition to the two items that Director Peck had to say,
Six on my
supporting
list.
roundabout and the entrance art statement, I would say just coordinate with what we're doing over here. Urge that, is also see if there are funding opportunities. And then evaluate if a hybrid would be a preferred method rather than just concentrating on a single lane, just because of the increased traffic. And that brings up an interesting question, what Director Leffel said. We do have months that are much busier than other months. So, when are those traffic counts being taken? And are they capturing our peak periods over here? So, yeah, I would hope we can get something in time for that.
Absolutely, we will. And I think I have 7 on my list now.
Oh, 7, okay.
And I think, we do counts typically, somewhat of a question, I think maybe I didn't answer, that the counts are taken typically in the spring and the fall, realizing that there's peaks all over, on the 101 South Salinas project, we have to make sure the ag, is not the peak day, but it's in that area in September. So, September and April is gonna be more typical, and there's gonna be worse days, but we don't design for the worst of the worst. That's why I think if I could just help you, a little bit, that the single lane roundabout be designed, be compatible with a future hybrid, as opposed to, I would say, try to change the design now. You can if you wish, but I think it'd be more effective to say, hey, can you design it with a single lane with the thought that it could someday be a hybrid easily.
Okay. Whatever works.
Doug, I just love to talk about money, and that is just a
Mhm.
big waste of money, because by the time you go and do all of that, and then you wait and then have to go through feasibility and do everything again, you have just wasted millions of dollars. I'm going to say that. You cannot just easily add something on. We're doing the same thing with gates here. It's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. We're going to finish something and then go and start it all over again. It's just such an impact on people. And it's everything costs more money the more you put it off. So just going to say that I would love a hybrid model. And I would love for Olmsted Road to be considered first. And I understand Todd said you've got like 50 million and you can do 3 on the east end with 50 million. But I really believe that the impact that this makes on the entire multimodal system of our county should be considered, because we are an integral part of the transportation network, and TAMC is Transportation Agency of Monterey County. So I really think that's important. So
Thing I want to point out, it's a good point, is that reconstruction is one way to go about it, but when you look at Highway 156 and 25, they're actually building it a single lane, and it's being a single lane right now while they construct the inner part. So I think, we would be designing this so that it's not rebuilt. So
thank you. And thank you to Todd for listening to our request.
we could come back on another issue.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Doug. If you want to grab your.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug.
We'll go ahead. We're gonna
okay.
take a break. I think we'll yep. Be back in at 10:40?
Yeah.
Because it's 32.
Sure. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Here's
Wait.
your mic's off.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Get a second chance anyways. After clearing my throat. December 13th, the rescheduled regular meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Airport District Board of Directors. And we are back to item G3, which is the regular, oh, I'm sorry, we are going to go to G4, just for some scheduling matters. So this is a resolution number 1864, a resolution authorizing the service agreement between the Monterey Peninsula Airport District and disaster cleanup specialists.
That is correct. And I'm going to ask Brian Roth, who is the project manager in the planning department, to brief you on this one.
Good morning, directors. Pleasure to be back for you. As you know, the district purchased this property, 2801 Monterey, in 2019. And at the time, we knew that there was going to be hazardous materials taken a fire before we did anything to the property. The staff has been considering recently some options for the property, whether it's to consider as a new home for our maintenance personnel. We looked at, I know there's been a budget item where it was allowed to renovate their current maintenance facility, but that seems to be an untenable solution, just for a number of reasons. So we're looking at possibly using 2801 Building C. And actually, Denise, if you wouldn't mind, let me bring up that image just to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about. You'll see there's a 2801 from the satellite. It's the large white building at the center of that.
You have to stop sharing. Brian, why don't you just keep going? We'll bring up the image.
So again, we've been considering some other options for the property, whether it's to move the maintenance personnel up there. We can open it up for revenue generation by making the rental property. It is 10,000 square feet of office space. And then obviously there's the large option, which is to raise it, but I don't think that's something that we're leaning towards at this time, regardless of what the disposition is. Abating is going to be required. So we put out proposals to two certified contractors, disaster cleanup and Park Environmental. They both came back with proposals that were within $1,000 each other. But I believe you have the proposal for disaster cleanup is much more thorough. Each line item is specifically broken out, and it gave us a much better granularity to what we were actually paying. Also, as you know, that there was funds, capital improvement funds that were allocated for repairs at 2801, and because the pavement project came in much less expensive than initially planned, there is some funds available to do so. So there's currently $132,292 available, and this project will require $108,000 and change. So I believe that is all that I have provided. Again, I don't know if you're.
Denise, are you able to pull it up?
And again, if there's any question as to which building it is on 2801, we know that L-shaped building is Renton and Keller, and then there's the two smaller structures in front. It's the larger of the two smaller.
The one closest to Highway
One of those
68.
sides. And so again, it's the staff recommendation that, you approve a $108,000 and change for the selecting the contracting out with disaster cleanup for the abatement project.
It is thorough, 15
is
pages.
Yeah.
And with that, staff would take any questions from the board, but that is the recommendation.
What is the timeline?
As
On
soon
it.
as soon as it's authorized, we're going to start moving towards. As far as the duration of the project, I couldn't tell you. I don't
Okay.
believe it's.
I think it
it's
was about 2
excessive, but
weeks.
We're looking at a month. if
Okay.
not over.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions. I appreciate it. That's a local company as well. And it's always good to have partners in the community and to open it up. Yeah, okay. Public comment? Go ahead and call out that.
No one online.
Seeing none? Bring it back to the board. Any other conversations or questions?
No.
I fully support this. I'm ready to make a motion. I move that we adopt resolution 1864, resolution authorizing service agreement between the Monterey Peninsula Airport District and disaster cleanup specialists.
Second.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chair Sani.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
demoing. Item 3, back to item 3. It is resolution number 1863, a resolution approving a professional services agreement with Labor Consultants of California, Inc. to provide labor monitoring services in support of the Safety Enhancement Program, Taxiway A Relocation, Phase B2 Commercial Apron.
So I will be taking that one. So as part of the safety enhancement program, the board previously approved the contract with Granite Rock and Vanguard JPA for the construction of the commercial apron project. As part of their requirements and federal requirements into that, there are Davis-Bacon affirmative action, government-wide requirements for drug-free workplace, and federal fair labor standard requirements that the contractor and all of their subcontractors need to meet. And with that, that is done under the labor monitoring program management, which we have typically done either through our engineering, sometimes the engineering staff will do that directly for us, or other times we've hired a subconsultant to do it that specializes in this so that they stay 100%, because those standards are changing constantly, so they are 100% up to date on all of the requirements that are necessary for each of the projects. With this, we would recommend Labor Consultants of California. They have done the work for us in the past. They are a disadvantaged business, a DBE, so they meet some of our DBE goals as well under our federal requirements for contracting. And they are extremely detailed and knowledgeable of how to monitor the labor consultant, the labor requirements under federal contracting. So we have a proposal in front of us for a not to exceed of $64,800. It is for about 30 hours a week for a 2-year period, because while the construction is probably about an 18 to 20-month period, there are often lagging documents that need to be finished up and signed off on. So at the back end of the project, we get a certification, we get a monthly letter of any deficiencies. They tell us if the deficiencies may or may not have a cost associated with it or a reimbursement that hasn't been made to an employee. So we use those letters to certify each pay app every month as well. So this is an integral part of what we do and how we get a good audit from our auditors of making sure we're complying with all of our federal requirements for taking federal dollars for projects under the AIP program. So with that, we recommend that you approve resolution number 1863, and happy to answer any questions.
And then let me take it out to public comment. Go ahead and open it up to public comment. Seeing no one online and no one in our audience at this point, I'll go ahead and close it.
No questions.
No questions?
Nope.
Anybody have questions?
I don't.
Now I'll move that we approve resolution number 1863, a resolution approving of a professional services agreement with Labor Consultants of California, Inc. to provide labor monitoring services in support of the Safety Enhancement Program, Taxiway A Relocation Phase B2 Commercial Apron.
Second. Second.
Mouthful.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chair Sani.
Yes. Closed session is next.
Right.
Did you order, Dino? Or I'm sorry, Carl?
Yeah, I did, but we
I think we'll be out of here, so we're gonna go to the
Welcome back, 1:22 on Wednesday, the 13th of December, and there's no board protocol function out of closed session. How many items is the last thing on that?
Well, we haven't gone through the board committee
You want to go
reports.
through the report?
It's up to you.
Oh, man, I gotta run. I
Okay.
apologize.
I pulled the report I had a question about, so the minutes of
maybe
the
we can just
meeting,
talk
so
about that one item and then put it to bed.
what I,
Which one?
I thought you brought up about the.
no,
one
about the
report.
leases, that's all. It was in the committee
Okay.
minutes, but that's the same as the board of the board reports. I
Yeah.
don't have anything I need to ask a
Awesome.
question about.
We're good. Yeah. We'll go ahead and nothing pending at this point.
Nope.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
All right.
All the best in converting the space. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You know, we should publicly thank the staff for how nicely they set up the boardroom for our board
Yeah.
dinner.